Hello everyone, this is David, and the film we watched tonight is the 1954 movie Gojira. Now this is the Japanese version, not the Americanized version. So it's a little harder for me to translate. There is a subtitling that is done, however, I'm certain that some of it is lost in translation. So I'll do my best to cover this. But let's start, as this is the first Godzilla film, with Godzilla, and try to describe him as best I can. So what is Godzilla, for those of you who don't know? Godzilla is a massive dinosaur-like creature that is bipedal. He has a long tail, he has back fins, he is aquatic, and he can breathe fire, or radiation, depending on when and where we bump into him, or radioactive fire. And the origins of Godzilla are kind of debated as to what exactly he is. In this movie, he is a combination of an awakened creature and a sort of born of nuclear fire creature. It's kind of confusing in that regard, but I believe the origin for him is he was a ancient creature that dwelled within under the ocean, basically, and he was displaced due to radioactivity, nuclear bombs and whatnot being tested and detonated, displaced/destroyed his habitat, so now he's coming ashore to look for food. Also, he is radioactive, but that doesn't seem to bother him at all. Another trait of Godzilla is that he is more or less indestructible. Normal weapons, missiles, tanks, guns, just don't work on him. So this is one of the earlier cases of the invincible atomic monster, as they were called. After Godzilla, pretty much every giant kaiju that shows up is indestructible. Before that, like Beast with from 20,000 Fathoms, you could shoot it, but it had this toxin in it that made it undesirable. So like you could gun it down, but it was a bad idea. Same thing with like it came from beneath the sea, the giant squid there, or giant octopus could be gunned down. King Kong, another good example, could be shot down. Godzilla, not so much. He's kind of indestructible. And that's a mainstay that will carry through in every single film that has Godzilla, with one exception. And that exception doesn't really count if you're any sort of Godzilla fan. But that exception, because it bears the name, needs mentioning, and that is the 1998 American Godzilla, which is called Geno by a lot of fans, which stands for Godzilla Name Only. Or he was later renamed by Toho because Toho integrated him into the group of monsters, and they called him simply Zilla. So there's no god, it's just Zilla. And I thought that was kind of interesting. And I think he's in one movie, which is Final Wars, and he's easily defeated. But anyway, let's get back on track and let's talk about Gojira, or Godzilla. So it opens up with this boat, and these people are on this boat, and they're fishermen, and they're having a good time. They're singing some songs, and you see this light in the water, and some stuff happen. Like the water gets crazy, and you hear everyone start yelling, and the boat's lost, and they blame the elders of the village. This is on Odo Island. There are a few survivors who mention a bright light in the water. The elders blame it on an old sea monster called Godzilla, or Gojira, that was from ancient times. And it's kind of like, this is an interesting film in regards to that, because it's very much the end of the old and beginning of the new, sort of, with Japanese tradition. So up until, I'm not 100% on Japanese tradition, but I'm pretty sure this is how it goes down. So, up until World War II, the emperor was considered a divine sovereign. And after World War II, I believe that sort of faith waned significantly. So, the old ways sort of died at the end of World War II with the surrender of Emperor Hirohito. I believe that's the emperor of Japan at the time. I might be wrong. I could very well be wrong. I don't remember. Like I said, I don't know Japanese history that well. But with the surrender after World War II, I think a lot of people lost faith in the traditions, and there was this whole group of youth who grew up basically rebelling against the traditions that led them to such destruction. At least that's what I'm led to believe. So anyway, so there's a kind of that undercurrent of the old ways versus science and understanding, and how there aren't these ancient gods or anything roaming around, except when there are. Alright, so they're looking into it and they're investigating, and there's more people going disappearing. And a scientist comes in. He finds that these places are radioactive, and there's some interesting stuff going around. And they send some more boats in to investigate, and some more of them disappear. And the scientist finds like this trilobite, and then this alarm sounds, and they hear this. There's this drumming sound that is supposed to be the creature walking. It's supposed to be Godzilla walking, which I thought was neat. And it turns out Godzilla is just on the other side of this hillside. He stands up over the hillside. The whole town sees him. They take some pictures of him, and now the world knows the horror that is Godzilla. And he's like about 150 feet tall, I believe. They said about 50 meters, maybe 40 meters. I don't remember. He's pretty big. He's not the biggest kaiju yet. He gets bigger as time goes on. As you find out, Godzilla's size kind of changes as the ages change. But so that's a problem. He goes out into the ocean. They find all these footprints, tail track in between the footprints, all that sort of good stuff. And the scientist goes back to Tokyo to present his findings, which basically what he says is, so nukes let this guy out, and now he's coming up to get us. Not to get us specifically, but like his way of life is kind of gone. So he's coming for he's doing the only thing he knows how to do, and that's like walk around and destroy things. So he's heading this way, and they're like, well, what are we gonna do? And there's this huge debate of they're arguing back and forth if they should tell people, because if they tell everyone, then it'll be a huge panic. But if they don't tell anyone, no one will be ready when the monster attacks. So they go ahead and they decide to end up to tell people. And he attacks. Well, he doesn't attack per se, but he shows up in Tokyo, and there's a boat that he kind of attacks, and everyone gets frightened, and the boat goes off. And in the meantime, they're looking for a way to kill Godzilla, but the scientist who basically discovered him wants him kept alive because he thinks it'd be important to science to study him. And so, meanwhile, there's this other plot going on with that scientist's Yamane. His daughter is basically the fiance of this other doctor, Daisuke Shirazawa. And Shirazawa has developed this technology that he calls the oxygen destroyer. And what that does is apparently it's this phenomenally powerful weapon that can literally destroy anything it touches, apparently. And he demonstrates, well, not anything, but like it can destroy any living material, apparently, because he deploys this in this tank he has, and it turns all the fish into bones. So that's impressive. And Godzilla ends up, so that's going on, and then Godzilla attacks the town, and they put up all like these electric towers around the city to ward off Godzilla. But Godzilla just comes on through. He doesn't care. I mean, it slows him down a little bit, but then he like just powers on through because, I mean, he's indestructible, and he trashes some of the town, and they send ships to go, or not ships, but jets to go fight him, and he wrecks everything. Like they evacuate as much of the city as they can. He's destroying everything. The whole place is on fire, and then he descends back into Tokyo Bay. The next day, you see all of the destruction that he's caused, and he's destroyed like everything. And there are people piling into hospitals, people with radiation sickness, people with burns, people that have been crushed. There's dead and dying everywhere. So they get a bunch of people come and basically get Shirazawa's oxygen destroyer, and they're like, we need to kill this guy. And nothing else works, so we gotta try this on him. And he's like, look, I don't want to do this. This weapon isn't right. I want to... So he destroys all of his notes, because he doesn't want this knowledge of how to make this insane weapon fall into other people's hands, because he's actually like a good scientist. He's not a mad scientist. And he's like, look, I invented this thing, but even I am scared of it, and I don't think anyone should have this kind of power. It again, allegory for nuclear weapons, which is what Godzilla's all about. And so what they end up doing is these two guys, Shirazawa and one of this other guy, I forget his name, they go diving down. They find Godzilla sleeping on the bottom of the ocean. They set up the oxygen destroyer. The other guy gets pulled up. Shirazawa cuts his cord and detonates the bomb. And it kills Godzilla. It kills Shirazawa. And that is it. That is the end of the movie. It is a little short. There's more stuff going on than just that. I mean, the investigation takes a while. I mean, it's like 30, 40 minutes before you even see Godzilla. And then he's stomping around the city for a good long while, destroying everything. But really, like, when it comes down to it, it's like he's destroying the city. That's better seen than said. So, for it to be effective. And you actually see Godzilla die. He turns to bones and he is defeated. So, if you're ever wondering how Godzilla originally died, he died in the very first movie, and he turned to bones by the oxygen destroyer. So that's interesting. The whole movie is very good. It's a very serious movie. A lot of the other movies lack this sort of serious tone, but remember, the things you have to understand is this came out about 10 years after the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. It was it was just coming out of its recovery period after World War II, and they wanted, and this was a film about basically for people who hadn't been there or didn't know. Basically, this is what many people live through on those days, like when they dropped the bombs. This is what it was like for them. So this is the start of the allegory for nuclear weapons that was monsters for a while. They're an unstoppable force of nature that just, for no reason, destroys everything you know and care about. And I think that's how a lot of Japanese people felt when Americans dropped the bombs on them. And to this day, it's a very powerful message. No one should have to suffer like that. Now, I'm going to go off on a little bit of a left field for a little bit. The debate over whether or not it was right for people to drop the bomb has always been hotly debated. After all, it was such a destructive weapon, and it was basically a terrible price to pay for the ends. But you had to understand, looking at it from the American perspective at that time, they didn't want to sacrifice one more American soldier. They wanted the war to end. Germany had already surrendered. Japan was basically given the ultimatum: surrender or there will be dire consequences. Japan refused. America, in basically its attempt to end the war as quickly as possible, dropped 2 bombs, killed a stupid amount of people, and Japan simply said, we can't do this. We can't fight that sort of firepower, and surrendered. A lot of people look back, and this happens all the time, not just with this, but like with all sorts of things, and like to be apologetic for things that they weren't alive for or they didn't understand. I come from the perspective that I had family fighting in the Pacific Theater at that time, so I fully, though I don't necessarily agree with the consequences, I agree with the statement of we need to end the war as quickly as possible to save our men. So, if such things hadn't happened, I might not even be here today because of that. Because my grandfather probably would have died in some place in the South Pacific. Both of them. So, that's a thing. That's a thing. So, you can see how it even like nowadays it has like an impact down the line. Although World War II veterans are getting harder and harder to find. My grandfather died a few years ago, about 5 years ago, and he was 16 when he joined the army. Like he was too young, but he lied about his age, and well, they didn't really have the internet or anything to check like birth certificates easily, so they're taking all applications. So older people, like finding people that were still alive in World War II, it's getting harder and harder. And this is something that should never be forgotten. Now, this is kind of funny because it's a little more serious than I usually get about these sort of movies, but this is seriously a movie that I believe you should take seriously. You should watch it, and in terms of entertainment, it is not the most entertaining of movies. It is not, but it is an important movie. It is good. It is entertaining, but it's not like the best movie ever made, but I feel it is a very important movie, and it gets the Japanese perspective on nuclear weapons down to a T. So, that's all. I guess I'm going to wrap this up now, but go check this out. If you haven't seen Godzilla, and I know a frightening number of people haven't, for whatever reason, go see it. It's in black and white. I know a lot of people nowadays, little younger kids, whatnot, don't like black and white for whatever reason, because, you've grown up and everything's been in color. Black and white movies are harder and harder to find. Just watch it. Appreciate it for what it is. And be thankful that we don't have to make those decisions anymore. That everyone has pretty much agreed nuking people is bad. But anyway, so that's just my little tirade on the subject, and that's Godzilla. Go see it. All right, folks. Good night.